Ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, Megabass announces their 2026 new products. The Bassmaster Elite Series is back in full force. We have a little Columbus Fishing Expo recap. We have a really fun fishing poll topic to see who your favorite anglers are, and the categories are wide open, including YouTubers, pros, online personalities, and it's pretty eye-opening who you guys actually ended up choosing. And in the mailbag, we tackle some great topics, including swimbaits being scams, $100 bait casters, value gear, nocturnal crayfish, and more on today's episode of Tackle Talk.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Tackle Talk Podcast. As always, we are brought to you by the great folks over at the Rod Locker. Brian, Chad, the whole crew over at the Rod Locker have opened up one of the best tackle shops in the country, headed up and owned by two of our favorite people that we've worked with for years. Brian and Chad and their whole crew are awesome, and they are open and ready to serve you online and in person. If you're around Evansville, Indiana, they have an awesome showroom right there on Congress Avenue that you can stop in. That's one of the best tackle shops that I've ever actually walked into physically, but online they have an ever-expanding line of rods, reels, baits, and the industry's best selection of lightly used fishing gear as well. They have hundreds of rods and reels on the website at great prices where you can save a ton of money just by getting something that is very, very lightly used instead of brand new, and it brings a lot of that gear that might have been just outside of your price range into your price range with the used gear over at the Rod Locker. They also have an awesome trade-in program. I know so many of us have gear that is sitting in our garage or in our room or in our basement that's just collecting dust that would have value to somebody. You just don't use it as much as you should. Turn that into the Rod Locker and get credit toward the gear that you actually want. You can upgrade your gear with the nation's best trade-in program. All of that and more from a great Midwest-owned tackle shop that you can shop in person or online. If you want to go online, it is www.rodlocker.com. That'll take you to the website. And as always, you can use code TackleTalkFebruary. That's going to save you an extra 5% off your entire purchase. It's sales stackable, and it makes sure that you are getting the best price on your fishing gear from the Rod Locker. So that code is TackleTalkFebruary for an extra 5%. Over at www.rodlocker.com. Okay, everybody, let's get into the show here today. First, we have a few housekeeping notes to go over. The first of which is that you guys heard in last week's episode that we had that episode in the hopper for, I don't know, a good couple weeks at least, if not a month, waiting for the right time to release that episode on a date and time that would end up being a good thing for Campbell and Slot Tech, and we didn't want to release it too early and then spike demand for something that he just wasn't ready to launch yet. And I just have to say that everyone that listens to Tackle Talk is so awesome. The feedback we got was great, and I know it meant a lot to a random kid just trying to take his idea, which is a pretty darn good idea, by the way, to the next level and watch his company sort of come to life. It's a cool product, it's innovative, and I know that I kind of started last week's episode on a bit of a serious note, like, look, this is what Tackle Talk was built for, shining a spotlight on the underdog with a great product and people that deserve to be recognized. And then when Campbell launched his website on Thursday night at midnight, holy cow. You guys, it was completely sold out before I even woke up in the morning. So he launched at midnight. I woke up about, 6 a.m. probably. Everything was sold out. It's insanity. It's crazy to think about. So I know that meant a lot to him. I really think that's what it's all about right there. Watching you guys and the fishing community in general rally behind a guy with a great product that's trying to bootstrap something is great to see. So I know Campbell is working on building up more stock. He's buying more 3D printers with the money that he was able to make with this last drop. And I know he is prepping for the next product drop of Slot Tech. So if you didn't get one, no worries. Just go follow his Instagram or the website for updates. But hats off to you guys. Selling out that kid in a matter of hours is incredible. So thank you to everybody that supported our guest from last week, Campbell from Slot Tech. Okay, the next little bit of housekeeping here is a recap from the Columbus Fishing Expo. And I say this every year. I know I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but I can't tell you guys how cool that 3 days is for me personally, to get to see all of you, to hang out, to get to meet a lot of you for the first time in person. to talk fishing and just kind of get together and have some human interaction with the show, which is something I don't normally get. I told a few of you at the expo when we were talking, but doing this show is actually kind of lonely sometimes. Like, a lot of times it is just me in a completely silent bedroom talking to a microphone in front of me and having a conversation with myself for, I don't know, an hour plus. And then on either side of that recording session is probably 2 to 3 hours of prep before I start recording, just laying out the show, making sure my thoughts are, where I want them and I'm not blathering on. And then the other 3 or 4 hours on the other side of that recording session is me in that same bedroom by myself, just editing away before I upload it. And then after I do upload it, all I get to see is just numbers on a spreadsheet go up. That's it. There's no live comments. There's no interaction, no real-time feedback. It's just kind of me and only me. So that's why the Columbus Fishing Expo and things like that are so special, because I got to meet hundreds of you that actually listen to the show every week. We got to shake hands, we get to hang out in person, and it makes it all just kind of feel real for a little bit. So super sappy way to look at it, I know, but it's the truth. And I know a lot of people made a really long drive or a couple people flew in. I mean, I literally kept a tally at the booth as people started telling me where they were from, and I counted 15 plus different states that people came from for that expo to come hang out. And I can promise you that however cool that is for you to get to make the trip and kind of come hang out and do all of that stuff, it is even cooler for me on my side of things, and I'm even more appreciative. So thank you to everybody that came out. We had full seminars both days. We got to give some of you guys screaming deals on tackle at the booth, like rods, soft baits, hard baits, merch. It was a blast. So the bottom line, I guess, is that you guys rule, and I am so grateful for everybody that came out to the Columbus show. Okay, next up on today's episode, we do have a really quick recap of the very first Bassmaster Elite Series event of the season. It just wrapped up this past weekend at Lake Guntersville. Now, this is a big deal, not only because it was the first event of the season for Bassmaster, but also because it's the very first event where no forward-facing sonar is allowed as part of that sort of compromise schedule that they did this year, where they took every 2 events, so the first and second events, and they flipped a coin. Then they did the same thing with the third and fourth event, the fifth and sixth event, etc. And they went all the way down the line so that basically every 2 events, you were guaranteed that one would have forward-facing sonar and one would not. And the coin decided which of those that would be. So the coin decided that the first event this year, Lake Guntersville, would have no live sonar, and that the second event coming up this next weekend, Lake Martin, will have forward-facing sonar. So this is a big deal. No forward-facing sonar for 4 days. Old school fishing, and boy, did it deliver. So our big headlines from this week were no live sonar, we know that, and weather. It was brutally cold for most of this event. There was actually ice on parts of the lake in the beginning of practice and the first early parts of this tournament. Mother Nature really threw the guys for a loop this week, but even with less than ideal weather conditions and even without the technological advances that we've made over the past 5 or 10 years, the results were awesome. So let's hit your top 10 here in reverse order. 10th place went to Dakota Ebear. 9th was Trey McKinney. 8th place, Kyle Welcher. 7th, Brandon Card. 6th place, Justin Atkins. 5th place, Wes Logan. 4th went to Jamie Hartman. 3rd, Matt Robertson. 2nd, Stetson Blaylock. And 1st place, Hank Cherry. So Hank Cherry wins your first no live sonar Bassmaster Elite Series event on Lake Guntersville, where he won the Bassmaster Classic 6 years ago in 2020, and this time he drops a mega 27-pound, 11-ounce bag on Championship Sunday to come up all the way from 6th place heading into that final day to win the event on his 52nd birthday. And as cool as all of that is, it's not even the coolest part of this tournament. The best part is what he won it on. Hank Cherry won this event, no scope, on Guntersville, for an Elite Series event on a bright chartreuse curly tail grub. Yes, as old school as it gets, a jig head and a grub. So cool to see. I think he was using a jerk bait most of the time to locate those fish and then actually catching most of them and following up with that chartreuse grub. And the gear that he was throwing it on was cool too, because he wasn't throwing it on a spinning rod like I probably would have. He was tossing that 1/8 to 1/16 ounce head and that grub over the tops of grass points with a 7-to-1 bait caster, a medium light casting rod, and 10-pound fluorocarbon. So a super light combo, honestly probably more of a jerkbait combo than anything else, but tossing that little grub over the grass and smashing him. Like, what more can you want out of an Elite Series event. And this tournament had a little bit of everything. It had theatrics. It obviously had the no scope aspect of this event. You had your top 10 all being within 8 pounds of each other heading into Championship Sunday. So it was anybody's game going into it. And then you had the diversity of those top 10 anglers that was cool to see. I mean, you had what we would call like quote unquote old school guys. I would probably call that more like Hank Cherry, Jamie Hartman. But then you also had people like Trey McKinney, who has kind of erroneously got this label as a scoper, and he finishes in 9th place out of 101 of the best anglers in the world with 0 live sonar. So he beats 92 of 101 guys, and it's so satisfying to watch somebody like that kind of silence the yahoos who egregiously say that those people can only catch him one way or that he can't catch anything without technology. That's going to be a really fun narrative going into the rest of the season, is seeing a lot of these guys that have been labeled quote unquote scopers compete and do really well in these non-forward facing sonar tournaments. So you had a little bit of everything here, and I'll be honest, I'm not a technology hater by any means, but this was one of the most enjoyable events that I've watched in a long time. It's definitely hard to argue that as a pure television product, these no live sonar tournaments are just going to be fun to watch as a fan. So that's your Bassmaster Elite Series stop at Lake Guntersville. Congratulations to your winner, Hank Cherry. The Bassmaster Elite Series will make its next stop this Thursday through Sunday at Lake Martin, and the MLF Bass Pro Tour will pick back up the following week, beginning February 19th at Lake Hartwell. All right, next up here on the docket for the show today, let's talk some new tackle. And this is one that is a tad sneakier than a lot of other releases, mainly because the release wasn't really in English when I saw it. But Megabass has semi-officially announced its 2026 new products, sort of. Not really on the United States side, but this was from Megabass Japan's webpage, and they had a big tackle show over there. I don't even know what it's called, but I think it's basically their version of like ICAST or a giant trade show over in Japan. And Megabass unveiled their new product line for 2026. And even if some of that doesn't hit the United States right now, you can bet your tail that a lot of that will come here sooner rather than later. I'm guessing probably in the next 6 to 8 months would be my guess. And I was trying to decipher that webpage the best I can, but it's all in Japanese writing. Luckily for me, Google Translate exists, so I was able to sort of make sense of the broken English translation that Google was able to give me. So there's a lot there on the webpage that we can sort of skim over. There's a lot of new hard baits, the IPX12, the IPX16, both of those are crankbaits. We got a new Vision 110 SSR. We're getting an Ito Shiner +1, the Dogmax, the Karashi IG, which is like a little single treble hook version of the Karashi with like a tinsel looking tail on it. You get the new Karashi 80, the Sling Shad, which kind of looks like their version of a Sakamata Shad a little bit. I can't tell from the pictures whether it has wings on it or not, but the tail and the body look very similar. We're getting a 7-inch mag draft. We get some new terminal and some other smaller things, but there are 2 big products that I do want to hit really fast and wrap a little bit more words around. So the first is that we are finally getting a Megabass Vision 110 +2 Junior. I know that's a mouthful, but right now all we have is the Vision 110 +1 Junior, or you have the +2 in a regular size. But for the +1 Junior, it's a smaller jerkbait. That's what the Junior means. And then the +1 means that it dives deeper than your standard 110 model. So the 110 +1 Junior is a small, deeper diving version of the regular 110, and it is nasty. It's probably, it's a tough choice, but I would say the +1 Junior is probably my favorite jerkbait in the whole 110 lineup from Megabass, even more so than the original 110. The 110 Junior +1 is sweet. And we've had the +2 for a while, which is just the regular size, but it dives even deeper than the +1. But now we're getting that +2 Junior size. Small and even deeper diving is basically what you're getting here. And even though the specs don't list a diving depth, I didn't see one at least, somewhere in the description when I translated it, it said something about reaching up to 3 meters. So you convert that, that's about 9 feet deep. I'm hoping it'll go a little deeper than that because the regular +2 dives down to about 12 to 16. And then the current +1 Junior dives to, I'd say, around 7 or 8, depending on your line choice. So even if it is only 9 feet, that's still like a foot or 2 deeper than the current deepest Junior model we have. so I'll take it. But I'm guessing on light line, you can probably get it a little deeper than 9. But I'm pretty excited for that little guy, the new +2 Junior. Now, the other thing that caught my eye and caught a lot of people's eye, I think, in this release was the brand new Megabass Levante rods. This is a pretty big overhaul of what is already a very popular Megabass rod. The Levante hits that really competitive $199 price point, but it's getting a new look. It's getting new components, and most importantly to me, they're making the switch from EVA foam handles to cork. Yes, the world is healing. We're slowly seeing more and more of these entry to mid-level rods ditch EVA for cork handles once again, and I could not be happier about it. We saw the Shimano Celis do this earlier this year. We've seen some mid-level Daiwas embrace cork again. It's just awesome. You guys know I'm a cork guy through and through, and I think some of our complaints or prayers or however you want to categorize those are finally being answered by a lot of these big companies. And I heard from a couple different sources from different retailers and people that would know a little bit more than me that at least currently, they're actually planning on keeping the price at $199. So a lot of times when you get these revamps, that's an excuse for these companies to raise the price a little bit. This looks like it's going to stay under $200 at $199, just like the old Levante. That would be awesome if that's true. I also went through and I think I counted 48 different models. So a huge lineup, very specialized lengths and powers, some pass down features from some more expensive rods in the Megabass family like the Orochi or the Destroyers. You're just getting a really nice, lightweight, balanced rod that should be a pretty killer upgrade from the already solid $199 Megabass Levante previous version. I mean, when you look at it in the pictures, it looks like a $300 plus rod in these photos that they're releasing, and you're getting it for $199. I am excited to try those out as well because I think that hits a really competitive price point that a lot of people are in right now, and a lot of rods that were in that $200 range are starting to move out of it. So anybody that can stay under $199, I think has a really cool spot in premium fishing rods right now. So there's a quick look at Megabass's new product releases. Basically, we're getting a lot of hard baits and we're getting a full refresh on the popular $199 Levante rods. All right, everybody, we'll get back to the episode here in just a second. But first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Humminbird and Minn Kota. And this week, we're going to combine these two prestigious brands because some of you may know, but I'm betting a lot of you do not, that Humminbird and Minn Kota are two brands that were optimized to work with each other seamlessly. So for instance, did you know that there is a feature called Backtrack where you can actually tell your Minn Kota trolling motor to automatically retrace up to the last 2 miles of the most recently logged route on your Humminbird unit? So if you just spent like an hour going down this bank meticulously guiding your trolling motor down a contour line, you can tell your Minn Kota to actually follow that backwards and go back the same route in reverse. Or how about you can use the go-to feature on your Minn Kota trolling motor to automatically go back to any spot lock or eye track that you want to return to, all through their advanced GPS integration between Humminbird and Minn Kota. So Humminbird and Minn Kota go together like peanut butter and jelly. They're quite literally designed and optimized to work in sync. I mean, there's a ton of other features like being able to follow contour lines automatically, circle mode. You can even control your Minn Kota trolling motor speed and steering from compatible Humminbird units without even being up on the trolling motor. You've got locked course autopilot. You've got locked heading autopilot, eye tracks, Humminbird virtual remote, and so much more. So with all of the benefits that those brands have on their own, Humminbird with incredibly detailed imaging, Minn Kota with reliable trolling motors, they're even better together. So for more information, you can head over to www.humminbird.com or www.minnkotamotors.com today. All right, let's jump into this week's fishing poll presented by Minn Kota.
This is the Tackle Talk Podcast Fishing Poll. Brought to you by Minn Kota. Adventure awaits at minnkota.com.
All right, everybody. This week, I figured now that pro fishing and tournament fishing is back officially with both MLF and the Bassmaster Elite Series both having one event under their belt for 2026, I thought it would be fun to do a little bit more of an open-ended fishing poll today where it's not really multiple choice, it's not yes or no, it's more of a fan submission style vote to see who is your favorite angler. very open-ended, very broad, and I was excited to see where you guys went with this. And then in parentheses, I even put, to make sure that you guys knew, this could be a pro, this could be a YouTuber, it could be an online personality, somebody in media, because I guess as nice as it is to, write in like your dad or your grandpa, which I'm sure is true for a lot of us, we're really looking for names here that we would all recognize to make this more fun. So simply, who is your favorite semi-notable, at least, angler? So before we get into your answers, I'll give you a few of mine, and I know I'm going to be all over the place a little bit here, but this will give us some good thought starters, I guess. My favorite pro angler today is probably Wheeler. I know that's a cliche answer, but I'm going to pick Wheeler for a couple reasons. Setting aside the fact that I just like him as a person and that he's been on the show multiple times, and I think we're lucky enough to call Jacob a friend, but we're going to set that part aside, and we're just going to go straight down the middle fishing-wise. I think that I really enjoy watching Wheeler because I can relate a little bit to his roots growing up in Indiana. He grew up just about an hour and a half away from where I live and where I grew up. We don't get a ton of crazy pro anglers come out of this sort of central Ohio, central Indiana region because there's just not a lot of great water around us to cut your teeth on. So a lot of people that came from this area or, do reach that high echelon of fishing moved away at some point, usually pretty early on, to get more experience on different bodies of water. There's not a lot of locals around here that really grew up in this kind of like southern Midwest area. I also think I like watching him just because we've seen him compete and win at almost any format. Like we've seen him do really well in team formats, in individual formats, in the biggest five, in every fish counts, sonar, no sonar, sonar restrictions. I think he's just a really fun, well-rounded angler to watch no matter the format. And I think some of that has to do with fishing MLF, which has changed formats over the past couple years and bounced back and forth. He's been dominant no matter what. I also just think he is an overly nice person. I think he's out there having fun. And I think because of the success that he's been able to have, I think he probably fishes a little bit more free than other guys. And he has that sort of like monkey off his back and he can do what he wants. And I think that shows out there. So Wheeler would probably be my number one choice in terms of pro anglers that are still active today. But there's a ton more that I'm not even going to like go down a list of 5 or 10 because then I will have to cut it off somewhere. And then a lot of people will be like, what about this person? What about this person? I mean, there are really, I can probably count on 2 hands the number of anglers that I don't really care for or I don't really like watching. There's very, very few. The cool part about fishing is it's full of down-to-earth, awesome people, and there's so many people that are just so easy to root for. But my number one choice is going to be Wheeler. If we go to YouTubers, there's probably a few YouTubers I would put on that list. I think Mikey Balls is actually one of them. He's an OG. I love watching Mikey just for the pure fishing side of things. I would say like Matt Streichel with SB Fishing, I really enjoy watching. I like watching the kind of no-nonsense fishing stuff. And I know you can say like, well, Mikey does a lot of nonsense, but it's more humor-based. Like it's not the crazy clickbait, every other video is the I took $12 to Walmart and it's the picture of Walmart oversaturated with a bunch of arrows to it and some sort of challenge or something. I just like watching people go out and smash fish. So Mikey is a great one. You go back and watch his OG videos of like him down in Florida just wrecking like 50-pound bags offshore, deep cranking and stuff. So much fun to watch. But then there's like different sides of YouTube that you could go down to. I think if you go down the route of like entertainment and impressive video content and editing that would just feel like it would take so long and maybe a little tongue-in-cheek sometimes, I think uncut angling is one of my guilty pleasures. I know that Aaron doesn't really post much anymore, but when he does and drops one from the clouds like he did a couple years ago on the forward-facing sonar stuff, and he was able to like make a really awesome point without saying a single word in the video with just cut-ups of everything that's going on and really funny way of putting all of that together. I think that is something that like nobody else is doing really well. I also really love marling baits. I love watching that type of YouTube because it scratches a couple itches. I like the DIY stuff. I like watching this channel where he's like building a bait and then going and catching a fish on that bait all in the same day. I think that Nate is a wizard in bait creation, and I think no one is even close to him in the YouTube game. And then I think for production value, it's probably actually hard to beat John Barzacchini. John B, been around for a long time in the YouTube game. His video quality has been awesome for so long. He was really kind of at the forefront, or at least one of the few that was like trying to take production value to not motion picture quality, obviously, because it's YouTube, but he was really pushing the envelope on the actual quality of HD video, of trying to put together a story, of making these videos that were like an hour or two long and making them like a movie, like a standalone production. Awesome stuff there. And then if you just want to go to like good old fashioned, bass fishing videos, we have a lot of buddies that do really great on YouTube. Bailey, Rudd, Nowak, Indie Yak Angler, Christine Fisher. There are so many good ones to watch just on the video side of things. And then there are people that kind of blur the lines a little bit that do really well on the tournament side, but also have their great online content. KVD, Ott, Ike, Polinick, all of those are just up there on both sides, and wouldn't be surprised if those show up a lot in your favorite anglers that you guys mentioned in this poll. And then you've got nostalgic and timeless picks. Like, you cannot have this conversation without naming Bill Dance. Bill Dance might be mine. You got Jimmy Houston, Hank Parker, so many of those great trailblazers that, again, we're lucky enough that are still around with us today. So I guess if I had to do my personal favorites of all time, I'm probably going Bill number one if I really think about it, just because Bill Dance is bass fishing. And then you've probably got Wheeler and KVD, and then the field is kind of wide open from there. But let's see what you guys said. I'm really curious. Like I said, this is our first open-ended one that we've ever done here on the fishing poll. Usually I give you guys multiple choice, but you guys were able to write in your answers, and then I meticulously counted each vote and organized them so that we have a top 5, and then I put together 7 honorable mentions that garnered enough of the vote that we should at least mention them. So your top 5 were, with 10.2% of the vote, your winner overwhelmingly was Jacob Wheeler. No surprise there. Jacob Wheeler takes your number 1 spot with over 10% of the vote. Number 2 was Tackle Talk and me. And I'm going to strike that from the record. I really do appreciate the nice gesture that all of you wrote in and put us as an answer, but I deserve to be nowhere near this list. So I'm going to respectfully remove myself from contention here, and we're going to keep moving down. Number 3, the answer was Bill Dance with 6.8% of the vote. And then number 4 was actually a tie. So these would have been 4th and 5th places, and they each received 5.4% of the vote. It was a tie between KVD and Ott Defo, which is really cool to see. There was a ton of love in these submissions for Ott Defo, and of course, Kevin Van Dam is Kevin Van Dam, and there's no world where Kevin Van Dam is not in your top 5 of most people's favorite angler. So after I pulled my name out, then we'll have to go one more step down to get to a true top 5 here, and with 4.8% of the vote, number 5 is going to be John B. So that's what your top 5 looks like. Number 1 answer was Jacob Wheeler. Number 2, we scratched out, so number 2 will now be Bill Dance. Number 3 and 4 were tied with KVD and Ott Defo. And then number 5 was John B, which is a pretty solid list because you have Bill from one generation, you have a retired KVD, you have 2 active anglers in Wheeler and Ott, and then you have a YouTuber in John B. That's a pretty well-rounded list right there from a lot of different areas of fishing. Now to our honorable mentions here. These were people that received at least 2% of the vote apiece. And I mean, we got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entries. I should have looked and seen how many we have, but 2% of the vote in this is quite a few votes. So these were substantial. A lot of you guys picked these guys as well. Your answers: Andy Montgomery, which was a cool one, kind of a surprise there. Brandon Polinick, Dustin Connell, MDJ, Hank Parker, Mike Iaconelli, and Jimmy Houston. All of those received at least 2% of the vote or higher. And then we had a lot of people that received somewhere between 1% and 2% of the vote. You had Milliken, Aaron Martins, Swindle, Jeremy Wade, which was a great answer, John Dalton from Creek Fishing Adventures, Christine Fisher, Matt Allen, Marlene Bates, Mercer, Trey McKinney, Tyler Anderson. All of those received between 1% and 2% of the vote. And you're starting to see a lot more diverse group there as well. A lot of more online folks are starting to trickle in. And there were probably, 200 plus different answers that people submitted in. I mean, most notable YouTube or online folks showed up at least once, if not twice or 3 times. And I really don't think there was anybody that I looked at this list and I was like, oh my gosh, how is this person not mentioned once? Almost everybody that I would have thought would have been in this list was mentioned at least once or twice. And what I think is interesting about this as a whole is that in that submission box, I even put, like, this could be a tournament angler, it could be online, it could be YouTube, and I still bet that 75+% of the answers were tournament anglers of some sort, which is so funny because a couple months ago we did a fishing poll and so many of you said that you don't watch tournaments at all. It was a lot of you that said you don't tune into tournaments, but then, weirdly enough, a lot of your favorite anglers are overwhelmingly tournament anglers or pros. And I guess that probably just comes down to the fact that a lot of pros aren't just fishing tournaments anymore. These guys have their own YouTube channels, they have their own social channels or podcasts or whatever. So even if you hate tournament fishing or you hate watching it, you're probably still watching a lot of these guys' content in some form from tournament anglers, even if they're just online sort of doing their own thing. So interesting stuff there from the fishing poll this week as we ask you all who your favorite angler is. All right, and finally here, we're going to get to the mailbag in just a second, but first, the Tackle Talk podcast is brought to you in part by Amped Outdoors. Amped is an industry leader in lithium batteries engineered and built for all sorts of marine applications. We're talking trolling motors, graphs, ice fishing, live sonar, kayak motors, you name it, Amped has a battery for whatever you're looking for. And with Amped, you get the highest quality components. You get things like waterproof case designs, Bluetooth connectivity so that you know when your battery is charging, when it's fully charged, or how much power you have left out there on the water. No more guessing. You can just pull up your app on your phone and check. Those type of features are available in a lot of their larger batteries through Amped Outdoors. A lot of times, if you get like a 50 amp hour or up battery, you're looking at things like Bluetooth standard. You're looking at things like heated charging standards so that you can safely charge your batteries in any weather condition. You're not supposed to charge a lot of lithium batteries under freezing. You can with those 50 amp hour and up amped batteries. You get all of that plus an industry leading 10-year no gimmick warranty and world-class customer support based out of Hudson, Wisconsin. They're a great family-owned company right here in the Midwest that makes awesome batteries at a great price. So you can head over to www.ampedoutdoors.com today and power your passion with Amped.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast mailbag, powered by Amped Outdoors, your source for premium, affordable lithium batteries.
All right, let's jump into the mailbag here. The first question we have is from Jonathan, and this is actually a pretty short one. There's just one sentence here that was sent in that says, "Did you see Debo's video calling glide bait fishing a scam, and what are your thoughts?" Okay, Jonathan, let's let's pump the brakes here for a second. I did see the thumbnail that you're talking about because I was scrolling through, I think yesterday or 2 days ago, and it popped up on my YouTube, and I do remember it having a question mark in it. And that question mark is important because I don't think the video said glide bait fishing is a scam. I think it said something like, "Is swim bait fishing a scam?" Now, I don't know for sure, but I know Devin or have seen him well enough. I've been on his show before. He seems like a nice guy. I would bet money that Debo did not actually call swim baits a scam if you watch the video. It's YouTube. It's the game that everybody has to play now where you're trying to get views and thumbnails and titles have to get you to click on it. And I've kind of softened on this a little bit over the years where I've just kind of adapted that philosophy of like, don't hate the player, hate the game. We live in a clickbait world. You have to get people to click that content, and boring titles and boring thumbnails just don't get it done. So I try to judge people more on the content of that actual video and not just look at thumbnails and not just look at titles. And Debo is a smart guy. I think he's got integrity. I would be willing to bet money that if I watched that video, he did not actually call swim baits a scam. I don't know that for sure though. I haven't. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's do a little time traveling here. I'm going to actually pause the recording here right now. I'm going to go watch that video and I'm going to come right back. And then we will actually talk about whether I was right or I was wrong. I think it's probably a better way to do this. So I will be back in probably 15 minutes my time, but about 2 seconds your time, and we'll see if I was right. Okay, we have officially time traveled back here, and I got to tell you, I watched the full video, and it was exactly what I thought. And to be honest, what I hoped it would be. It was just sort of a, I don't know, level-headed look at glide bait fishing, and especially for a beginner that doesn't really throw a lot of swim baits or doesn't have a lot of confidence. I think he just laid out some pros and cons of big swim bait fishing. Many of which I will probably agree with, right? The pros that I think he listed were more like having more drawing power than smaller baits, generating bigger bites than a lot of smaller baits, but then he had some cons, like, you have to build confidence in them, and oftentimes you catch less numbers throughout the day versus some smaller, finessier bait. And as a general rule, I think all of those are pretty fair. So nowhere in the video did he call swim bait fishing a scam, and I'm glad he didn't, because that would have been a severe misuse of the word. Scam, by definition, is a dishonest scheme to gain money or possessions from someone fraudulently, especially a complex or prolonged one. That is a definition straight from Merriam-Webster. So there is nothing fraudulent about a bait category. Even if a bait sucks, even if you think it's terrible, even if it runs terribly and never catches fish for you in your life, it's not a scam. It's just not your favorite bait or not something you like to throw. Unless, I should put this caveat in here, unless that company is consistently falsifying advertising or misleading consumers about the actual product that they're getting. So if you are ordering online and you order a 7-inch resin bait from a website and then it shows up at your door and it's a 5-inch plastic bait, and everybody who orders that same bait has that same experience and the company just takes people's money on deception, now you have a scam on your hands. But even if that happens, that is one specific company. That is a company that is scamming people. It's not the category of glide baits or swim baits as a whole that are the scam. It's an individual person or an individual company. So you can think they're overrated. You can have no confidence in them. You can say they suck, but that is not the same thing as a scam. A scam is systematic, purposeful, fraudulent deception. So I'm glad that that video was not that, and it was just, the pros and cons of swimbait fishing. Debo's a good guy. I had a feeling that it probably wasn't a video just calling all swimbait scams, and yeah, you see something like that, it's a title, it's a thumbnail, it's not the actual content of the video. I would recommend probably watching it first. All right, the next mailbag question here was submitted from Timothy, and he says, "Hello, Andrew. My name is Tim. I'm 37 years old and just now getting into fishing. I've been fishing before when I was a child, but I don't really remember much. As someone just starting, I figured I would start with panfish and crappie. I have some old ugly stick poles with some cheaper reels on them, and I have a couple bait kits. First off, are bait kits worth it? And second, what about phone apps? Do you have any suggestions for finding fishing spots or weather or fish activity? I just started listening to your show and I have a lot of catching up to do, but there's just so many options out right now. Before, you would just get an ugly stick and some worms and go fishing." Hey, Timothy. Yeah, that's the coolest part about fishing is you can make it whatever you want. If you want it to just be an ugly stick and worms, I got good news for you. That still works. Fish are going to be eating worms off of hooks casted on ugly sticks until the end of time. So that is 1000% still an option if you want to go out there and fish that way. But it sounds to me like you're at least interested in taking the next steps and learning more or starting that journey to becoming a more well-rounded angler. And that's why you're asking about bait kits and apps and you're listening to the show. So let's start with bait kits. Are bait kits worth it? Well, not all bait kits are created equal, so there's your first problem. And to be honest, a lot of these, you go online and it's 750-piece bait kit for $20. That is not worth it. Those are a lot of times like the epitome of a product looking impressive in the pictures and in the title. And then when you open the package after it's shipped to you, it's very underwhelming. Like it'll say it comes with 50 hooks and the hooks look normal size in the pictures. And then you open it up in the mail and it's a 1-inch long Ziploc baggie with 50 hooks in it that are the size of your pinky nail. And they feel like they're made out of aluminum foil. And that whole bag of hooks, those 50 hooks that look so good in the picture, are in a bag the size of like a Sweet and Low packet. So when you open it up, you're like, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. I didn't want 50 microscopic bait holder hooks. But that's how these kits kind of get you. They advertise a really impressive item count. So 50 pieces, 100 pieces, 500 pieces for a ridiculously low price. But when you open it up, we all know how that ends up. So you get what you pay for. I would rather take that $30 or whatever you were going to spend and just go to Walmart. Get the little Gremlin split shot weights, get the Eagle Claw hooks, get the Shakespeare line, get the basics that you need that you can actually look and feel and see them when you're buying them to make sure they're the right size and the right weights you want. I'm just not a fan of kits in general where you're wasting money on half of the things that come in that kit that you just don't want. Like if I primarily fish a 1/8 ounce split shot on a size 1 hook, well then I don't want a kit that comes with 100 hooks and only 10 of them are the size I want. And then with the weights, only 5 of the 50 are the size I want too, and 1/8. And then all the other ones are these ridiculously small or big sizes. So in that kit, only 10% of the kit that you bought is what you actually want. I would just go out, buy what you want with the money that you have. That is my advice on that side of things. Now, as far as the apps go, the short answer is no. I think there are a lot of BS apps out there. Fishbrain, I have talked about it before. I will spare my blood pressure before getting all riled up. I'm not a fan of Fishbrain. I would put a lot of those fishing apps somewhere in between unnecessary and a joke. It all just depends on the app. But I think all you need to be a good angler in terms of apps, I would get a good weather app, and I would get Google Maps. Those are my two main ones. I would also get, like a stream or water level data app. If you're in a lot of rivers or creeks, those gauges can be really helpful. But you just need something that's going to tell you, as far as the weather goes, the basics. I want wind, I want direction and speed, I want cloud cover, I want temperature swings, fronts coming in, barometric pressure, all of that. You'll be way better off with something like that than some voodoo app that's trying to do all of that and tell you, oh, tomorrow between 2 and 4 p.m. is a score of 9.7 out of 10 for catching your personal best. I think all of that stuff is kind of ridiculous at some point. So I would find a good weather app. I might have said this before, but if not, I use Weather Underground. Sometimes it's just abbreviated Wonderground or shortened like that, but it's not the most user-friendly app, but it is the most accurate that I've found. We use it at work. I use it for fishing. It's a pretty spot-on weather app. It is not the prettiest to look at. The data tables and stuff, you have to zoom in on your phone to really figure out what's going on sometimes. But as far as accuracy, that's the one that I trust the most. And then, Google Maps, I use the little pin feature to put either a heart or a green flag on a lot of places on my maps. If you open up Google Maps on my phone, it looks like a Christmas tree lit up, but I actually code things with a red heart where I've been and I actually like that spot. And then I mark places that I want to go with a green flag. And then when I do go, and if I like it, I turn it into a heart. And if I don't like it, then I'll usually just delete it and move on. But then on Google Maps, you can also put notes for each little pin. So, you can put, hey, 42 degree water temp, smashed them this day off of the northeasternmost point on the lake or something like that. So you can put notes in there so that when you do click on that dot in the future, you have some reference from the past. I like to do that sometimes and use it almost like a little, journal type deal to keep track of all of my fishing spots. Okay, the next question here is from James, who says, love the podcast and thanks for the great knowledge that you share. What is the best bait casting reel under $100? This is a question we get a lot, and I kind of like that we get it a lot because it changes all the time. There were a lot of reels, if you'd asked this question 6 months ago, that would be in this conversation that no longer are. I mean, the SLX is no longer $99. We saw a lot of those reels that used to be $100 or under really cross that threshold in the past 6 months, and now they are $119 or $129. So a lot of those staple answers are just not there anymore. So right now, I would still say the Bass Pro Shops Pro Qualifier is probably my favorite reel under $99. And I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to say it. I think this is true. It might be the only reputable aluminum frame casting reel left under $100 from anybody. This might be the last man standing in terms of aluminum casting reels that have not gone over $100 yet. So the Pro Qualifier gets my number one answer, and then it's kind of wide open from there. We do have two newcomers in the past year that were released. You have the Daiwa Aired and the Lose Excel. Both of those are well under $100 and brand new since last July. You have the Shimano Chaos, which I'm not a huge fan of. And then honestly, you'd probably put the Cast King Skeet Reese Icon maybe in the top 3 at this point. It's a pretty solid reel for $99 in a list that keeps getting smaller and smaller. So I think that would have to be your short list to look at. It's going to be the Bass Pro Shops Pro Qualifier. It's going to be the Daiwa Aired, the Lose Excel, the Shimano Chaos, and the Cast King Skeet Reese Icon. I think that's probably a good list for you to look into. The next question here is from Zach. And Zach, I got to tell you, man, I know it was a little too long to read here on the show, but I promise you I read all of this question. Really cool story. I'm glad that you found fishing again. You're getting back into it, and congratulations on the kayak. But anyway, I'm going to pick up this question right here at the end. It says, anyway, sorry for the long story. My question is, what fish finder would you recommend I pick up for this summer to put on my kayak? I've never used electronics for fishing before. I would definitely like to have the ability to add live sonar when I can afford it down the road. The LTE comes already set up for a captain's bridge from the factory. That's where I plan on putting it. Again, thank you for the hard work that you do for creating this fantastic podcast. Thanks, Zach. Man, I do appreciate it. The thing that's cool about this question is a lot of times we get the question of like, hey, I'm looking for my first electronics and I want to add it. What should I get? That's a totally different answer than someone that writes in and says, I am going to take the dip into electronics, but I want this to be almost future proof. Like I want to be able to grow into this and add as I go and not have to replace this unit in 2 years when I decide that I want to add live sonar. So that's a completely different answer. I would say if you're looking at a unit to add on where then down the road you can add live sonar if you want to, but you don't need it right now, the Humminbird Explorer units or the Garmin 93 SV. Both of those are great. The Humminbird is much newer and the user interface is a lot more pleasant to navigate than my old 93 SV. The 93 SV from Garmin is really the entry-level live scope graph. It's 9 inches, which isn't ideal, but it gets the job done. That's what I used LiveScope on when I first learned to use LiveScope. That unit does have its quirks that I didn't love, but the side imaging is actually decent with that GT54 transducer, but I have had 2 of those transducers crap out on me over the past 2 years, which is not exactly a ringing endorsement for them. But on the other hand, I've never had an issue with a Humminbird transducer in my life. I've never had one go bad yet. Now, the Explorer is going to be a little bit more expensive, like a couple $100s, I think, but I think it's worth it just in terms of the pleasantness, I guess, if that's a word, of like the user experience. Like your menu settings and everything are just less quirky. You don't have to go through 8 different menus, off of the screen that you were looking at to start with to change all of these settings and then go back and look at your graph and see if it looks like you want it to, like you do sometimes with the Garmin 93 SV. And that's why my personal choice at this point is Humminbird. That's why we're working with Humminbird this year. Mega side imaging is awesome. It's the best side imaging that I've ever used. Megalive 2 has come a long, long way, and it's a great live sonar when you do want to add it down the road. But here's the big kicker for you as a kayak guy. That Humminbird only needs the head unit and the transducer for Megalive, so you have that live sonar. There's no intermediate black box. Garmin has a completely separate piece of equipment that you're going to have to put in that kayak somewhere, and it's a real pain in the tail for guys like me that want to keep their rig light and portable, especially in small water. So that was something that I was disliked about my Garmin setups, and if you ask me right now, February 2026, I'm going Humminbird from here on out. All right, the next question here in the mailbag is from Andrew, great name by the way, and he says, hello, I've been a hardcore kayak fisherman here in Tennessee, mainly fishing larger creeks and rivers. I recently picked up a 14-foot flat-back canoe for super cheap. I have a 35-pound thrust Minn Kota trolling motor, but no battery. First, do you think this trolling motor will be enough to use to get to hop to spots on the creek and rivers, and what battery would be the best price and weight? Amp hours and actual weight. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Keep up the good work with the show, Andrew. Man, you guys are just setting me up, I guess, for layups for sponsors this week. I definitely appreciate that, I guess. But you have a Minn Kota 35-pound thrust trolling motor, 12 volt. So I'm guessing it's an Endura probably, or something along those lines, just a little tiller, 12 volt, 35-pound thrust Minn Kota. So if that's true, I think, don't quote me on this, I should look this up, but I think the max draw on that is somewhere around 30 amps. So if you go full speed, then theoretically you should be pulling 30 amps from that battery. So a 30 amp hour battery would last you 1 full hour at full speed. Now, that speed is continuously for a whole hour, which is something that you're never doing with a transom mount trolling motor in a canoe. And then if you're going 60 to 80% throttle, then you significantly reduce that amp draw too. So I would say like a 50 amp hour battery or better would last you a long time. A 30 amp hour will last you a good day if you're making some serious runs probably, but it all depends on how long you're actually using that motor in a given day and what speed you're at. But unless you're making insanely long runs for like hours, which I guarantee you're not, then I'd probably say, I don't know, the 30 to 50 amp hour range should be fine for you. Amped has a 12 volt, 60 amp hour Bluetooth battery. It's got heated charging, all of that, and it's like $369. That would be a great buy it and then don't worry about it ever again type battery. You'll have plenty of juice to go around that day. The Bluetooth app will let you monitor how much battery you have so that you don't have to worry about whether you're running out. That would probably be my choice. I'm a big fan of just going a little bit bigger on the battery, spending a little bit more money, but then knowing, hey, I am not going to kill this out on the water. I don't have to baby it. I don't have to worry about if I'm going to get stranded somewhere. I like the peace of mind. So I go a little bit higher on my amp hour and just take it out of the equation. All right, the next question here is from Alex, who says, hey, Andrew, my name is Alexander, and this would be my first mailbag question. I'm a seasoned bank angler and I love listening to the podcast. I've learned so much, but my question is, how do you choose hard bait colors, like baits including jerk baits and crankbaits? That's a good question, Alex, too. I would say 2 words: confidence and conditions. I think hard bait colors really come down to those 2 things: your confidence in that color and the conditions that you're throwing that color in. And to be honest, I think it's probably about 50-50 in terms of importance. The conditions, I mean, the dirtier the water, I tend to pick up really dark hard baits like blacks and blues or really dark browns, or I go really bright colors like chartreuse. I mean, I think the best dirty watercolor of all time is chartreuse blackback. That's an awesome color, and you get the best of both worlds. You get bright and dark, you get that contrast, and it's just a killer when that water is really dirty or muddied up. And then in clear water, I think I pick more natural patterns. You go gizzard, craw, a lot of silvers or semi-clear translucent colors. I would say seasons also impact that color choice. We all know that red is a really popular choice in the spring. Why does it work? I don't know. There's a lot of theories, but you can't argue with the fact that one of the most popular spring colors of all time is red. And then forage matching. So if you're in a heavy perch lake, then you lean on perch and fire tiger patterns. If you're in a lake that's nothing but gills and craws, well, then maybe you shy away from your standard gizzard patterns and you go with a little bit more of like a gill or a dark barred color right on the side of that bait. I think match the hatch sometimes is so cliche, but there's a reason that it's said a lot and there's a lot of merit to it. And then the other piece is confidence. Like, that's self-explanatory, but there are colors that because of my history with that bait, I will throw in any condition. Baby King Yo patterns are a bait like that, white with a little bit of pink and like a slight yellow tint on its back. I absolutely love that color for smallmouth. June bug, if I ever go down south to visit my parents in Florida or something, almost the only color I bring with me is June bug. Why? Well, partly because of the water clarity down there. There's a lot of like darker tannic water, but then also because it's just got the job done for me whenever I went down there and fished with it, and I'm more confident throwing it. Confidence makes you fish better because your decision-making gets better, your mechanics get better, your alertness, your attitude. Confidence feeds all of those things. So keep those in mind when you're picking your colors. I would say confidence and water conditions. All right, the next question is from Gavin, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I'm 19 and completely obsessed with fishing. I live in Georgia and mostly fish Lake Lanier. I've been working hard to get on the water more, and I'm pretty over fishing out of my 12-foot John boat. I know you're a kayak angler, so I wanted your opinion. Should I go with a kayak or save up for a boat? Kayaks are cheaper, but the boat just sounds like more fun. Also, thanks for the podcast. It makes my week." Hey, Gavin, appreciate it. I will make this one pretty short and sweet. You know I love kayak fishing. I think it is the best mode of transportation for the water that I fish around here. But that being said, if I lived anywhere near and mostly fished Lake Lanier, you can bet your tail that I would have a boat. So with where you live and the bodies of water that are right there at your fingertips, I'm going boat all day long. Save up for it, grab that boat, go smash fish on Lanier. And then the last question here is from Kyle, who says, "Hey, Andrew, I enjoy listening to your show every week. I had a pretty cool experience on the frozen lakes of Wisconsin this past weekend. I pulled up a bass through the ice and it coughed up a bunch of 1.5 to 2 inch crayfish. I guess I never really thought about bass foraging on crayfish while the lakes are frozen. Just out of curiosity, do you have any insight into whether crayfish stay active all year long, even under the ice, or do they kind of dig them up out of the mud? I always just assumed that they kind of hibernated. Thanks." Kyle, appreciate you writing in. That is a cool one. What I know about crayfish, which obviously isn't a ton, I'm not a biologist by any means, but I don't think that they hibernate like a bear or something like that, like a true hibernation. I think they just kind of enter this state of dormancy, or they don't really move a whole lot, like they slow way down. I just think they kind of become a little bit more immobile. I've heard that they bury themselves pretty deep. Like, I read reports from a researcher a couple years ago that was doing sampling, and the crawls were like a foot or two below the bottom. So they had buried their way in that mud or in the deep rock way down. So I guess that they kind of sort of just hide and wait it out and don't really move much. But if they don't bury themselves deep enough, or a bass just happens to find them, then they're probably the easiest meal of all time because they're not fast. They're basically just slow and frozen, so that bass takes advantage of it, would be my guess. So maybe those craws that those bass coughed up that you caught just had a really bad spot to chill in, and they should have hid themselves a little better. I don't know. But to answer your question, no, I don't think that they're quote unquote active in the wintertime. I don't think they're down there just moving and swimming around completely normal, but I'm sure bass have figured out how to still find them even when they're burying themselves a little bit or hiding in deeper crevices. I don't know. I'd be really curious to ask a biologist or someone that knows a lot more than me on that. So next time we have one on, I will add that to the list for sure. That's cool. All right, that wraps us up here pretty nicely. That is today's episode of Tackle Talk. I appreciate you all for listening. If you want to interact with the show, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can head over to tackletalkpodcast.com and you can go to the mailbag and submit your own mailbag question, or you can go to the fishing poll and you can submit your answer for next week's fishing poll, or my recommendation while you're there, just do both of them. Thank you for being a part of the show and for making the second half of every show a little bit more fun because you guys participate in it. Other than that, you can head over and you can shoot us an email if you have any questions. That's tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. That would help us a lot. And we'll see you right back here next Tuesday for another brand new episode of Tackle Talk.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.